Hello, my name is Linda Abraham, and I am the president of Accepted and the moderator for today's masterclass. I want to welcome all of you to How to Write a Compelling Med School Personal Statement to be presented by Dr. Mary Mahoney. Before we start, you have a few items to keep in mind. Number one, if you have not yet downloaded and printed out the worksheet for today's presentation, I invite you to do so now. You found a download link in the chat window, and I'm going to post it again for anybody who just came in since I posted it a few minutes ago. Here we go. Dr. Mahoney is going to, and before I get to that, again, my recommendation is that you actually print it out if you can and use it as to take notes, to follow along. And there are a couple of exercises that you can do after the webinar based on what Dr. Mahoney is about to tell you, and that's all part of the worksheet. Dr. Mahoney is going to ask several questions during the presentation and ask you to raise your hand in response, or she may do so. You can do so by clicking on the hand icon. And right now we're going to test your Zoom skills. I'm sure you're all experts, but if you want to go to medical school in order to pursue your dream career, please raise your hand. Okay, well, most of you are, all right, great. Most of you are here for the right reasons and know how to use Zoom. Raising hands allows you to respond to our questions. What about your questions? We have time at the end of Dr. Mahoney's presentation for questions, and we'll answer them then. Please post your questions in the question window at any time. Please post your responses to Dr. Mahoney's or my questions in the chat window. Your doing so will help us go through more questions more quickly. Again, questions in the question window, responses in the chat window. Okay. And a last point, when you leave, you're going to receive a brief survey. Please fill it out. We value your feedback and we use it. I review it all the time. Now, a word about Dr. Mahoney. She is a former nurse who earned her PhD in English and became a tenured professor of English at Elmira College, where she specializes in medical humanities and narrative medicine. She has been guiding college students applying to medical school for most of her 20 years at Elmira College. She joined Accepted in 2020 and has quickly become a much-loved consultant and valued member of Accepted's consulting team. She also just became the director of Elmira's program in narrative medicine. And now Dr. Mahoney will present how to write a compelling med school personal statement.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming to this webinar. I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to jump right into how to write a compelling personal statement. First, keep in mind that a strong personal statement is a narrative that encircles you and medicine as subject matter. Most personal statements have general prompts. The following prompts frame you and medicine explicitly. Why medicine? What made you decide to pursue medicine? Why do you want to be a doctor? Explain a life experience that brings to light why you want to be a doctor. Describe the moment when you knew you wanted to be a doctor. Explain a moment that changed your understanding about medicine and doctors. I doubt these topics come as a surprise. However, some of you might be asking, is it possible to write about something else and still write a successful personal statement for your medical school application? The short answer is yes. Here's why. I said earlier that a strong personal statement is a narrative that encircles you and medicine as subject matter. So it's certainly possible to write about something else as long as that something else encircles you and medicine explicitly. As the topics I've already mentioned do, or the topic encircles you and medicine implicitly. Typically, these alternative topics imply your physician-like attributes. The following topics have potential because they do two things at once. One, they tell the story of a personal experience that sheds light on one's interest in medicine. And two, they reflect a portrait of oneself as having suitable character, values, or listening skills, all of which are desirable attributes for physicians. These skills are demonstrated by the depth of your insight or the depth of your learning upon examining and narrating your experiences. This often is a challenge we help our clients overcome. Please write down 2 or 3 of the following topics with which you intuitively identify. Here are the topics. Write the story of when you had a strong mentor who inspired you. Explain a unique talent that built skills that parallel those needed to be a doctor. For instance, were you a varsity basketball player? Are you a licensed pilot? With this topic, be certain to make the connection that this skill has critical value in medicine. Write the story of the first time you saw for yourself the presence or consequence of healthcare disparities. Write about rural medicine and the story of someone you met while volunteering. Write about urban medicine and the story of someone you met while volunteering. Write about a global medicine trip that revealed to you how your American privilege was something you always took for granted. Write about a global medicine trip that revealed to you the integral link between culture and public health. Write a family story about illness, how it challenged you, what it in the end taught you. Write a personal story about illness that grew your empathy for others. Write a personal story about illness that taught you perseverance and integrity. Stay specific, stay personal. Remember, narrative is a sense-making mechanism. At the very least, your narrative should be able to answer or demonstrate the answer to one of these questions. What have you come to understand from your experiences? If you are writing about a challenge, how did you overcome this challenge? How did you turn the story of that challenge into a testimony of conviction and courage? Do you conclude about moving past an obstacle or critical situation? What did that teach you? How did your experience change you for the better? Okay. The next step in the writing process is brainstorming. Some of you may be saying, brainstorming? What is brainstorming? Brainstorming, what it is and what it is not. Okay. Brainstorming is a method of generating writing ideas when the pressure is off. Basically, brainstorming is when we write on a topic for a certain length of time with the hope that we will arrive to meaningful representation and insight in the narration. So when you write for 10 minutes about one of the topics that spoke to you, don't censor yourself and don't stop typing. Take a topic, set a timer for 10 minutes, write nonstop on that topic until time's up. Setting aside time to brainstorm and write about personal experiences is useful to figure out what you have to say and how you want to say it. However, just because a particular experience is important to you does not mean it is the right choice for your personal statement. That's where brainstorming is useful. It is preliminary writing that will show you whether or not you're encircling yourself with medicine. For instance, let us say you have had a great mentorship in college from a soccer coach. It is possible, while intending to otherwise express appreciation and praise for the wisdom this coach has brought you, you may have just revealed to the admissions committee how in your heart you really want to be a soccer coach, not a doctor. Right, so that's a pitfall. So after you do some brainstorming, the only material worth writing up as an essay must be writing that encircles you with medicine, either explicitly or implicitly. Finding your story. is often another challenge that we help our clients overcome. Here's what to do next. To write a successful personal statement, you'll need to mine your experiences. Try addressing different topics at different times, not all in one sitting, at different times of the day, with or without music playing, because none of us attend to our ideas in the same way all day, every day. After you have brainstormed 3 different topics for 10 minutes each, look at where your psyche goes in the written narration. Find the story that is the most memorable one for others to read, as it reveals a favorable portrait of your character, your personhood, even when you are writing about someone else. By this I mean, just as telling a story about yourself reveals your character, how you tell a story about someone else also reveals your character. And when I say, find the story that is the most memorable one for others to read, as it reveals a favorable portrait of your character, by favorable, I do not mean bragging or egocentric portrayal of one's greatness, right? By favorable, I mean fortitude, empathy, compassion, leadership, or teamwork. Here's another tip. If we consider that there are 3 key ways in which we experience empathy, each way has its own narrative direction. Here are the three kinds of empathy. 1, cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is simply knowing how the other person feels and what they might be thinking. This is sometimes called perspective taking. This is the story of imagining being in someone else's shoes. This is the story that demonstrates your ability to see your patients through their own lens, not yours. 2, emotional empathy. When you feel physically along with the other person as though their emotions were contagious. This is the story where you cringe when someone stubs their toe. You tune into a similarly known feeling, or you tune into a similarly known situation that produces a feeling that is the same as the feeling conveyed to you by another. In the context of medicine, this is the story that conveys your ability to stand in illness with your patient, understand them, feel with them during a hard moment. 3, compassionate empathy. Compassionate empathy is when we not only understand a person's predicament and feel with them, but we are spontaneously moved to help if needed. This is the story of being compelled to take action to help someone out. This is the story of making meals for someone, taking care of a sick person's children, driving someone to and from chemotherapy. This is the story of taking charge of a caring bridge page for someone or starting a GoFundMe site for someone in need. Okay. How do you choose the best draft for your personal statement? 1, think of your goals. Your personal statement is a profile of who you are, what makes you tick, how you have lived, and how you have had valuable life experiences. By way of this experience, you are revealing the constitution of your being that demonstrates compassion and insight for the human condition. This snapshot of you becomes then a glimpse of your character, a quality that matters greatly for physicians. Narrative frames. How do you assess the framework of your stories in your brainstorming drafts? The following examples demonstrate 3 frameworks you do not want in your personal statement and 1 framework you must have in one way or another in your personal statement. 1, this is a no self-pity. Is the undercurrent of your draft, others are so lucky, I have had nothing remarkable happen to me? I see this in drafts sometimes when an applicant is overcome by the thought that their life experience is not worthy of a story, that it has not been special. However, valuable life experiences are not experiential gifts more fortunate people have had. Valuable life experiences are brought into focus by your ability to see and explain the essence of an experience. True, you may never have met Barack Obama, but you did meet a woman in a waiting room last year whose experience in the pandemic helped you find your own pathway to help in your community. 2, this too is a no. That something happened is not enough. That something happened is not nearly as important as the way in which you tell your story. Maybe you did meet Barack Obama, but if you cannot glean deep human awareness as an outcome of writing this experience, then this is not the experience to write up for your personal statement. 3, this too is a no. No generalizations like, I want to help people. Instead, tell the story of how you helped one person. One. Here's an example of what an aware helping one person narrative sounds like. When I helped my father during his cancer treatment, I was drawn to Barack Obama's book, Dreams from My Father. His book helped me gain perspective on this difficult time. I could choose to be present with my father. I was fortunate to be able to help him. Though this was a difficult time, it was one of growth. I felt so much gratitude that I had had an attentive father through my childhood. I would much rather cope with the pain of my father's illness while helping him than muddle through the pain of an absentee father, as Obama did. My father was present for me. I would be present for him. We talked about the Red Sox during his chemotherapy. We talked about Daisy, his cat. We talked about his treatment options. And finally, this is a yes, mining. We must mine an experience for its humanity and integrity. Doing so, we write valuable life experiences into being. Through narrative, through story, we unpack the humanity of an experience as we see it, as a moving revelation. Mining brings out truth rather than platitudes. Take, for instance, this sensitive truth in Obama's Dreams for My Father, when he says, there is an underlying struggle between worlds of plenty and worlds of want. This phrase resonates with humanity and integrity, whereas a platitude is a counterfeit insight. Platitudes pretend to be truthful. A platitude is a remark or a statement, especially one with moral content that has been used too often to be interesting or thoughtful. People change is a platitude. Everything will be all right is a platitude. Everything happens for a reason is a platitude. Keep in mind, in the end, your personal statement is a testimony to your personhood and character. Do not pad a personal statement with awards and accomplishments. Avoid redundancy with other parts of the application, MMEs, and experiences. Ultimately, we want to share a story that, in its telling, reveals not only your humanity, but by your example, our humanity. The human insight that unfolds through your story conveys how you pay attention, conveys how you listen. What you uncover looking back at an experience becomes revelatory or healing, which in turn suggests, 1, your readiness to move forward in life, which translates to the admissions committee that you are ready to practice as a physician, and 2, the manner in which you will do so with fortitude, empathy, integrity, whatever is the quality that is resolutely yours. One last effort to bring Obama into this again. So looking back, we can see that truly mining the meaning out of a past experience affords us the strength and courage to move forward into the challenging life ahead. When life ahead means being a doctor, mining truthfully suggests a conviction to understand experiences. Doing so nurtures our sustained empathy for the world and its people with optimism, as Obama has said, with the audacity of hope. Notice he doesn't just say the word hope, which is an easy word, a tired one too sometimes. Instead, he says the audacity of hope, which is an utterly stunning phrase and concept. And it too is the title of yet another one of his books. So, a word about final drafts, because writing to completion too is a challenge we help our clients overcome. The final composition must be an impeccably complete weighing of a situation, a seamlessly polished showing and telling. Remember, the word essay means to weigh. The final composition must sustain intellectual and emotional maturity all through the essay. And lastly, the final draft must demonstrate ruthless editing for content, grammar, style, voice, vocabulary, idea development, and syntax.
Thank you, Dr. Mahoney, for the excellent presentation and the great advice. I'd like to ask attendees now, MBA applicants, what did you find most valuable in Dr. Mahoney's presentation? What piece of advice, insight, piece of information did you find most valuable? And you can post that in the chat window, please. Concept. Different kinds of empathy. Thank you, Reshma. Anybody else? Anybody else? What did you find most valuable? Anybody like the idea of having empathy? Okay, good, Yuma. Excellent. That's very good. One of the different kinds of empathy, as Reshma said, the attributes to highlight. Great, Kai. If I mispronounce somebody's name, please forgive me. As it happens today, I was speaking to somebody who's been in medical school admissions as a dean. Now she's the dean of diversity, equity, inclusion, humanity, and brainstorming. Great, Yuma. She was saying, and does say in her book, and said in the interview, it was a podcast interview, that the idea that you have to highlight the meaning in an experience. Can't just tell the experience. You have to say, why is it significant? What's the purpose of it? Or in her words, so what? I find that concept particularly noteworthy and something that I think is definitely something you folks should keep in mind. So thank you for your feedback. Now, the overwhelming majority of you have found this presentation to be highly valuable, and the feedback attests, and it is, but we're going to go into Q&A for a few minutes, and you're welcome to post questions in the question window right now. And many of you are going to have questions that will reflect the limitations of presentations and articles and podcasts like this one. All these resources, and Accepted has tons of them, and we try and make them as helpful as we can, are for the many. They have to be, on some level, generalizations. They have to be general. They can only give you general advice and principles, the what of admissions on a fairly high level. And let's face it, it's hard to get accepted to medical school, right? The stats are not terribly pretty, right? This is from 2019 and 2018. You'll see that MD schools had a just under 41% acceptance rate, or applicants had a 41% acceptance rate, I should say. Schools had much lower rates. COMAS, it was 35.34% of applicants actually got into DO schools. It's hard to get accepted. Applying the excellent advice Dr. Mahoney provided today to your personal statement, your goals, and your experiences, that's the how of applying. And that how begs for individual advising from experienced professionals like Dr. Mahoney, who can guide you through the marathon that is med school admissions. And that individual advising, as you'll see in a moment, is a key factor not only in applying successfully, but also applying confidently, and maybe even applying in a financially beneficial way. And your goal now is to apply successfully and confidently. Given the complexity of the application process and the odds you're facing, you need a guide who knows the process inside and out and who can support you through this grueling journey. You need Accepted to be your guide. With Accepted, you get access to professional expert advice. You can save time, you can apply with confidence, and you can apply successfully. We survey our clients, and last year, over 90% of our client respondents were accepted to medical school. In a nutshell, you get candor and objectivity with an Accepted guide at your side, combined with decades of experience in med school admissions as you go through the grueling application process. We have the admissions experts, the guides, who can mentor you through the process so that you achieve your goal of applying confidently and successfully. Former admissions directors, staff members, narrative medicine program directors, post-bac program directors, committee members who have been on the other side of the process and who can be your guide through the medical school application process. Here's what I suggest you do after the Q&A. Visit accept.com/medical/services/essay-editing. And yes, I'm going to put that URL on the slide for a little longer. Choose a service that's right for you, get the guidance you need for that individual component, and go from confusion to clarity and from doubts to confidence. Now, some of you may say, isn't Accepted expensive? Well, so is rejection. Our fees are very clear, but the cost of rejection is not quite as obvious, even though it can be significantly higher. So let's take a look at the risks of not applying with Accepted, or the potential cost of not applying with Accepted. Accepted's minimum investment is $340. A primary application package is $26.90. The cost of reapplication can easily be $3,000, like nothing. If you apply to 20 schools and the average fee for each school is $150, you're at $3,000. You also, if you are rejected, would have a year of earnings at a much lower level for most of you than after you get your MD or DO degree. So there's that cost. There's a potential that you could have gotten into a better program, perhaps with greater lifetime opportunities and even earnings, or perhaps gotten in with a scholarship as opposed to getting one without a scholarship. Every year we work with applicants who talked to us a year earlier and decided after taking the do-it-yourself approach and getting rejected that they wanted to work with us now. We're happy to work with them. We love working with reapplicants, but they would have been better off working with us initially, and so would you. Enough from me. What do Accepted's clients say? Let's take a look. These are from two of Dr. Mahoney's clients. I am so glad I was able to have Dr. Mahoney as an advisor. She gave wonderful advice, great communication, and an overall great outcome for my medical school career. Thank you. Well, the next one, I very much like how the statement has come together. Thank you for all the advice and help. Now, Dr. Mahoney is a wonderful, skilled, talented consultant, in addition to being an English professor, but there is only one of her, and she does book up. I don't want you to think that we don't have other talented experts on the staff, so here's a little more feedback. This is for Alicia McNeese-Moncar. I do apologize for lagging my response. It is evidence that I'm very busy because I am a med student. I was offered 4 interviews total and was accepted to 2 schools. Well, the next one, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Actually, I will. Dr. Rothman was incredible. We could not have asked for a better advisor to work with. He was kind, considerate, went beyond what we could have ever imagined. I'd highly recommend him to anyone looking for assistance with this process. We'd love to help you as we've helped the authors of the comments you just saw and thousands of others over the last 20 years. So once again, on the screen, this is what I recommend you do as a follow-up to today's webinar. Visit accept.com/medical/services/essay-editing. Choose a service that's right for you. There are a few options there, different prices, structure, flat rate, hourly, etc. Get the guidance you need and apply confidently and effectively. So now I'm more than happy to take your questions. And there again is that URL if you want it. Anybody have any questions on the presentation that Dr. Mahoney just gave? Please post it in the question window. And I'm going to wait for you to come up, think of a question. I'm going to ask a question. Okay. Actually, I'm going to ask a question of you folks first. While you're thinking about that, give me a minute. Here's a poll. Where are you at in the application process? Do you all see the poll? Raise your hand if you see the poll. Oh, you're voting already. Okay, great. Are you a first-time applicant for this cycle, a reapplicant for this cycle, or planning ahead to apply? Actually, it should be 2022. That's a mistake, or later. Okay. So again, that should be 2022 or later. Okay, we have almost 80% voting. Anybody else want to vote? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So it's 64% of you are first time, and 18% of you are reapplicants, and 18% are planning ahead. Okay, great. That's interesting. Now I assume most would be first time applicants. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Again, if anybody has a question, you can post it in the question window. And here's another poll for you. Okay, are you planning? Are people applying MD, DO, or both? All right, MD only, DO only, or both? And again, 78% voting. I'm going to end the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and share the results. 64% of you are MD only. 36% are both, and nobody is DO only. I'm surprised that nobody is DO only, but that's okay. That's fine. And let's stop the share. And let's see, I think I might have one more poll for you. And here's a good one. Okay. Have you started your personal statement yet? The options are, yes, I've begun writing. 2, I've made some notes. And 3, not at all.
Oh,
Okay.
here's questions.
I see we have some questions. Okay. With 92, you like this question a lot more. 100% voting. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll, and here are the results. So 43% have begun, 36% have made some notes, and 21% not at all. Those are probably the people who aren't applying till next year, which makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, I'm glad that most of you applying this year have definitely started the process. That's great. Now, we do have some questions that came in. The first one from Annie asking, you be more specific with how you help applicants? Is it merely looking over drafts for personal statements? Annie, thank you very much for the question. We have an essay package where we would actually send you a questionnaire first to learn more about you and your experience. Then we would meet with you. We discuss what should be included in your personal statement, send you discuss the theme, structure, etc. If it's a personal statement only, we'd only discuss the personal statement. We also have a primary application package. It's on a different page than I've listed here, but it's easily found. And then we'd also discuss with you kind of what goes in what slot, what's in the personal statement, what's in the MME, what's in the activity descriptions, etc. Then you would get an outline for the personal statement. You'd write the draft on your own. The outline provides structure and direction. You write draft on your own and you send it to your consultant, and the consultant, Mary or somebody else would, Dr. Mahoney or somebody else would edit it. And then you go back and forth in the editing process until you're ready to submit. That's the package. What we call our hourly service or review and editing is much more like what you're describing. You have a draft, you send it to your consultant. The consultant provides feedback first on content. Maybe you need an example. Maybe you need to go a little bit more into what is the significance of a particular experience, that meeting that we've been kind of focusing on this evening, or those kind of suggestions. Maybe something would be more effective. It was moved to the beginning of the essay. Maybe the conclusion needs to be strengthened, whatever it is. You revise, you send it back, and then hopefully the consultant can work more on clarity, style, word usage, sentence structure, etc. Dr. Mahoney, do you have anything to add to that process? Was that pretty good?
Yeah, that's a thorough summary of what we do. But I can also say that there's a little bit of a bond that
Oh, yeah.
happens, yeah, with the consultant and the applicant or the client, and because we talk together and we work through some ideas, and we kind of kind of loose get a little bit more relaxed with each other, and I ask questions and I say, oh, that's so interesting, tell me more about that. And so there's a little bit of a bond that establishes, that ends up building some trust, which makes many, if not most, clients suddenly say something that is the revelatory thing. And then we write it down and we keep kind of teasing that out a little bit further. So it's almost like there's brainstorming on the page, but there's brainstorming in conversation together. And the consultants are experienced. They know how to kind of tease the deeper essence out of something, or to go after how to say it in a way that frames you with one of those characteristics the attributes that we were talking about earlier.
And also keeps the focus on you and medicine, that Dr. Mahoney was talking about at the beginning of the presentation, that this essay has to be connecting you or encircling you and medicine and the connections between you.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Anne has a question here. She asked, should the personal statement specifically not include themes for the most meaningful activities? Themes or experiences? And which are you referring to?
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. Experiences.
Should the personal statement specifically not include the experiences from the most meaningful activities? In my mind, it makes a lot of sense that what you end up writing about in your personal statement might, in fact, be a most memorable experience. However, in the part of the application that is the most memorable experience, that's really a summary, and it's very factual, and it may have a sentence or two that kind of situates the value of that experience, the personal value of that experience for you. But for the personal statement, even if you were to choose one of the MMEs to be the subject matter for your personal statement, the theme, which is why that word was so interesting, the theme is going to be rather different, because you don't really reveal a theme in an MME, but you will in a personal statement. And that has to do with, how do I look at this in order to demonstrate back to the people who are reading it that there was a growth moment here, or there was a revelatory moment here, or I understood something that I never really understood before. And you don't have room in writing up the MME to even talk that way. So for the personal statement, it's really the story that comes through, and the story where you unveil finally some depth.
Can I add to that also?
Sure.
And you should look at your application. Look, you are, I am sure, a multi-dimensional human being. You've had different experiences, good and bad, in different areas of your life. Obviously, or not so obviously, you presumably have some clinical exposure. You probably have community service. You have research. You have a personal life. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you're a musician. Maybe you're an athlete. Maybe you're more than one of those things. Maybe you've had some challenges that you've overcome personally in your life, either illness or family issues, financial issues, whatever it is. Those are all topics that could be part of your application. To a certain extent, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. That's, I think, a great metaphor for the application. And you're trying to fit in these different pieces so that the admissions committee can meet you and get to know you through the application. And if you only have one corner of your life in 2 or 3 different places, the admissions committee is not going to get a really good picture. So I would try, yes, I don't like the term most meaningful experience, because really what you normally put is the most meaningful experience in the personal statement. And then the question is, well, if I put my most meaningful experience in there, what am I supposed to put here? I understand that, but I think it's just a little bit of a misnomer. I think you have to strategically look at the application, definitely, figure out what goes where in a way that overall introduces you in the best way, showing the fortitude, the integrity, and all those qualities that Dr. Mahoney talked about.
Yeah. Everybody's application is a little bit different. And for one person, it might make sense that you pull from the MME because it's really such a profound thing
Right.
that happened. But for someone else, it might seem like they're replicating. And if they're replicating and the personal statement doesn't really sort of unveil some kind of statement on humanity or a statement on someone guiding you into a certain kind of life wisdom or demonstrate your ability to listen deeply, it's not going to serve you to have any kind of replication in that manner. So if there's replication, it has to be really mindfully done.
Okay. You're very welcome, Anne.
Yeah.
Let's see. Annie also asked, what are red flags in the primary application that you would work with or advise applicants not to do? Well, I'm going to let Dr. Mahoney address that. Obviously, some red flags would relate to your grades and your MCAT score, but we're not going to touch on those because that's not the subject of this this webinar, this masterclass. So, Dr. Mahoney, what would you say? What are red flags?
Well, let me give you one red flag from this past application cycle that I saw, and that is everyone got asked the COVID question. What were you derailed in any way, or did you have any kind of upset in your plans or the work that you were doing due to the pandemic? And again, like one of the no's that I said today was no self-pity. And maybe that's a little bit of a strong phrase, but even just to say that I had to stop shadowing, or I had to stop doing X, Y, or Z, or I went totally online with my studies, or I couldn't take the MCAT when I had planned to take it. To end your answer there is I was really inconvenienced by a worldwide pandemic, which seems a little limited, right?
A little self-centered, perhaps.
Yeah, and everybody can say something like that, but to turn that in some way into, therefore, then I had to figure out a way to open a door, and to open a door not just for me, but to see what I could do in order to participate in helping my community, helping my family if you were personally affected, or even just helping the public health services that suddenly had to get put into place, whatever it could be, so that it became, unbeknownst to you, suddenly it became an opportunity to participate and engage in a positive way, and therefore then speaks toward this idea of leadership rather than this idea of being inconvenienced. End of story. Like that. You don't want to really phrase anything that way, or stop your explanation at, look what this did to me. Those are red flags.
That's a great response. And I actually did a whole podcast on that, which I'm just finding the URL for it. Here you go. I completely agree with Dr. Mahoney. If you stop with what happened to you in the pandemic, certainly if it's a matter of inconvenience, then you're coming across as very shallow.
Yeah.
So even if you were, and I hope it's not true, if it was more than inconvenience, maybe it was unemployment and serious financial hardship, maybe it was losing a loved one, maybe it was being seriously ill yourself. Those are all legitimate things that you can discuss in your response. But if you stop there, you're entirely passive. Things are happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the next step and discuss how you responded, what did you do to dig yourself out of the financial hole and maybe help others? What did you do when your volunteering was canceled? Did you organize a group to assist more vulnerable people in doing their shopping? Did you start a meal train for somebody who couldn't go out? What did you do? Make yourself an actor and the subject of a sentence, not the object of events. That's an effective COVID response.
Mhm. It's the third kind of empathy.
True.
That I witnessed this and I felt it, and therefore then I felt compelled to take action. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other traps? I was thinking about a trap and flew out of my head because I thought this was a great example. Oh,
My dog was barking.
this, yeah. I was born in, I came from are terrible openings for an essay. Absolutely terrible, or about as common as you come.
I'm just
Those
gonna
are
have
the,
to get the dog.
yeah, and I think Dr. Mahoney mentioned a few others, generalizations, talking about experience without saying its significance. Those are all the kinds of things that we both work with our clients to avoid or to prevent, to be more accurate, and that you should avoid in your essays. Okay, so that was a great question, Annie. Thank you very much. Let's see, we have a few more questions here from Reshma. How many experiences do you recommend that we include in the personal statement? Is it better to explain personal growth in 2 experiences or show your uniqueness, exposure to diversity of experiences, readiness for medicine with 3 to 4 activities? Dr. Mahoney.
Yeah. Okay. My go-to advice on this, and I sometimes find myself changing that a little bit depending upon who someone is and what their stories are. But tell about one experience and tell it well. Yeah. We don't want to.
Sometimes you can weave in more, but I would go with that experience too.
Yeah.
That advice rather.
What I see sometimes, especially for reapplicants, is that in their previous year's personal statement, they'll use the personal statement as like a bucket, and they'll put all of their accomplishments in that bucket. And it doesn't read fluidly, and we don't get a sense of your person. It just feels like another way to list accomplishments in paragraph form. We want the story, right? It's something where the essence of you comes through. And
There's a weighing of experience, as
the
you said.
way.
Right.
So when
it's not a resume in prose.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's not a resume in prose. So, but also we don't have to get every great story that we have in the space of this essay, because you'll never be able to develop them well enough to really get at their depth or their humanity.
Okay.
You need time to do that.
And space. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Okay, Rishma, you're very welcome. Any other questions? Happy to answer them. If not, I have a little bit more for you. But
Is
if
it
you have,
better to explain personal growth in 2 experiences, show your uniqueness, or
that's what we
expose
just did.
to diversity? Oh, okay. I saw the word diversity and I just thought, did I miss something?
No, diversity of experiences.
Okay.
All right. So I want to thank you, those of you. Anybody else want to pose a question? Last call for questions. I think we got them all. Oh, here we have one. Yuma asks, as a non-traditional student, keep going, Yuma. What is the ideal page limit for a personal statement? Every personal statement, and certainly in the AMCAS applications, I think it's 5,300 characters, right?
Yes.
I don't remember what it is in a COMAS. I believe it's somewhat shorter. So it's not a page limit, it's a character limit. And if you go over, you're cut off. So you have to stick to that limit. Okay.
Word will give you the character limit as well as, character count as well as word count. I didn't see that last question.
Yeah, you might think you, Aisha filled it in, but Yuma is trying to type a question. As a non-traditional student, can I mention my first time to experience medicine? That could, yeah, especially if it was an influential experience. That, Mary, what do you think? I shouldn't answer.
I didn't quite.
Yeah, she broke it up. I'm assuming it's Yuma as a she. As a
can I
non-traditional
mention-
student, can I mention my first time to experience medicine? You're welcome, Aisha.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but I would absolutely sit down and do some brainstorming to see if there's something there.
Yeah.
without question,
The other thing I want to point out, when you're asking us, should I talk about this? Should I do this? We don't know what else you could possibly be talking about. It's maybe there's three topics that would be good. You're only meant telling us about one, and maybe number two or number three is even better. So that is the kind of thing, by the way, that we would discuss with our clients. Okay, we have some more questions coming in. This one is from Tanaka. And again, if I mispronounce names, okay, so Yuma added like over 15 years ago. I wouldn't make that the subject of your entire essay since it was 15 years ago. But again, we'd have to talk to you a little bit more to get more information, I think. Tanaka asks, hi, do you recommend mentioning a bit about your struggles with grades and tuition and say what you did to overcome that fit and grow? Or I'm not sure I'm getting all this. Say what you did to overcome that, I guess, struggle and how you grew or not at all. Yeah, it's a little bit, not quite, I think a word got auto-corrected there. It's a little bit hard to understand. It's in the question window. Do you see it?
No. I see Yuma with the final entry is from Yuma Paris, and it says, okay, thanks. Is it
up from there?
Oh, up.
Yeah.
Do you recommend mentioning a bit about your struggles with grades? That one?
And tuition. I mean, I think it would depend on what was the cause of the struggles. And what did you do to overcome it? Those, again, the details count. I would, if your grades went up, I mean, there's a lot here that could be good, and some that would make me say maybe you're better not talking about it. But do you have an opinion?
If there's a glaring weakness, at some point you'll have to address it. But to strategize a bit about when that might be the most opportune moment to do so. Sometimes it's in secondaries.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can address it without even having to say anything. For instance, as you would know, say a little bit of a lower GPA, but then you nailed an MCAT. Right, and that speaks toward your academic prowess, your academic ability. So, and then later on, you might have to address something in the secondary, but none of that really, unless there's like a really triumphant overcoming a disability kind of story. I wouldn't recommend the former to be the subject of a personal statement.
Right, because it doesn't, unless there's some tie into medicine there.
Yeah,
I'm not, I put the prompts back up on the screen, the general prompts. I don't see that in what you wrote. So it could be there and we're just not seeing it, or I'm not seeing it, but just keep in mind the concept that Dr. Mahoney said at the beginning. You want your personal statement to encircle you and medicine.
mm-hmm.
And I've talked to many admissions directors, and what they're trying to answer, they want to see an answer to why are you choosing medicine.
Okay. Even with a life that had that even if you had experienced in your life some disadvantages, there's a way to talk about them to show your triumph, right? Rather than to say, I didn't have as many opportunities as other people, and it's making me really anxious.
Right.
Right. But to talk about it in a way to kind of show, fortitude, to show ambition, to show all of those things, keeping in mind too, that medical schools are absolutely committed to diversifying their classes and to, in all ways, whether that's, socioeconomic, whether that's gender, whether it's race, whether that's, all the variety of ways in which diversity matters. And so sometimes a disadvantage becomes a story of difference that is valuable. Right. So, and that's how we would frame that.
So Anne wrote in the chat window, so from what I understand, the advice is actually not to answer the prompt of, quote, how I decided to pursue medicine, close quote, but why choosing medicine may be after a number of experiences. I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to get at, Anne. Um, the story of how you decide to pursue medicine, I believe, could be an appropriate topic for a medical school personal statement. But I think, as Dr. Mahoney emphasized, and I should probably just let you answer this, is it's again, it's going to be about the significance that you attach to the experiences that convinced you want to be a doctor. And Anne added, but that story may include a number of experiences. You can also focus it on the most important experience. Yes, Dr. Mahoney, I'm going to keep quiet. I'm sorry.
Well, that's why I gave a variety of topics, right? And that's why I asked you to choose the ones that intuitively felt like they spoke to you in some way. And then you do the brainstorming, and then you write things down and you look at what you get. And if what you get from those brainstorming experiences, from the topics that you intuitively felt yourself leaning in toward, you have to then look at the outcome. Remember that your goal here is to get in. Your goal here is to get into medical school. And no matter how wonderful it might be to write a personal narrative about this experience or that experience, you want to really provide the one that is going to do what you need it to do. And not everyone will choose how I decided to pursue medicine, right? That's not going to be the pivotal story for everybody. So, or the pivotal topic for everybody. So if that speaks to you, then I would try to tease out the story that's there by doing all of that pre-writing, and see what you get. And then if it's not really working for you, then choose a different topic.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks you too.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to thank you very much for your time, your answers, your questions, and participation. I'd like to thank Dr. Mary Mahoney for the wonderful presentation. And I'd like to share a story, a thought, and a question with you before you leave. Okay, we're almost out of time. I don't want to keep you. Remember the advice that Dr. Mahoney has given you about authenticity and timeliness, balance, steady effort, the importance of integrity in your writing, and writing a revealing, authentic personal statement, one that really reflects the essence of who you are. Now, if you're concerned about the personal statement and the other writing required to apply successfully to medical school, not to mention the interviews or the secondaries before the interviews, and you're anxious about spending the next year or so immersed in this marathon, that remember the excellent advice you've gone today. Apply successfully, apply confidently, and imagine yourself in the place of the client you're going to hear from now. He had slightly low numbers and was stressed and overwhelmed when he came to us. He worked with Accepted, and here's what he wrote a year after he had been sitting where you are today. I've been thinking about this whole crazy process after being accepted to 3 medical schools, and I know that I wouldn't have had a prayer if it weren't for your substantial help. They say the essays are one of the most important aspects of the application, especially for someone like me whose numbers are a little below average. So I can't express my appreciation to you enough. You've helped me immeasurably. You greatly de-stressed an important part of this process that was making me quite anxious. I felt much more confident in my essays after working with you. Slightly low numbers, concern about the quality and quantity of writing. Wait a second here. Concern about the quality and quantity of writing you will have to do between the personal statement, the MMEs, and the secondaries. If you can relate, then also realize this client did it. He's now in medical school, and you can do it too. Take the same steps he took and get accepted. Now for the question I said I have for you. You stayed for the presentation and the Q&A. You stayed for my pitch. You're clearly interested in what we have to say. So if you are not, I'm wondering if you can help me out with something right now. If you're not currently either a client or planning to become a client, could you just share with us what is causing you to refrain from engaging with an accepted consultant like Dr. Mahoney? Why, what is causing you to sit on the fence? If you would share that, I would really appreciate it. Anybody want to share? Question or chat window, well, your choice. Writing skills, that would, well, if you feel you write really, really well, then that would, I guess, be a reason that somebody might not want to engage. But realize that most writers have editors for a reason. I'm talking about professional writers. So non-professional writers usually can benefit from it even more. And if you don't think you have good writing skills, then presumably you need the help even more, not less. All right. In any case, since I'm not getting additional responses, if anybody else wants to share, I'd love to hear from you. If not, then I appreciate your time and your attention, your questions, your answers. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you again to Dr. Mary Mahoney for her presentation, and good luck with all your applications. Take care. Have a very good evening.
Thank you, everybody.